Hey guys, hello and welcome. This is my video review of the Airoh GP 500 full-on top-of-the-line race helmet. And you're looking at the Ducati Andrea Dovizioso race replica version of this helmet, and this helmet happens to be mine as well. I've owned it for about 4 to 5 months. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to try my best to kind of give you a brief overview of all the key features, the pros, and hopefully some of the cons as well. That won't be easy given that this is my helmet and I am not a professional reviewer, but I promise you I will try to be as objective as I can about it. Some of the key features about this helmet, well, if you're looking at it right now, you should be probably someone who's looking for a very sport-focused kind of a track helmet, probably. Someone who takes his riding very aggressively and seriously. I'm not so sure whether this might be suitable for you as a touring helmet or even a street helmet. You probably have to see the rest of the review and decide for yourself if the features that come with this helmet are acceptable compromises for you. As far as Airoh is concerned, I'm pretty sure that from the ground up this was designed and built specifically to perform excuse me, on the track. And there are a lot of features that reflect that, and a lot of design decisions and compromises were made to allow maximum track performance. Now, so going down to the key features now, the first thing that you probably may or may not know about this helmet is that it is extremely light. What you're looking at right now is a medium-sized shell fitting my head, which is I think about 58 centimeters, and according to the official documentation, the weight of this helmet is actually 1.3 kilograms, or 1250 grams if you want to be absolutely precise. At least that's what it says on the back of the helmet, and on the literature you can find on their website at airoh.com if you wanted to have a look. And you know, just carrying it in my hand, this is really light, and you have absolutely no reason to doubt at all that they've been lying about the weight figures. I genuinely believe that it is absolutely accurate. It is probably the lightest helmet I have ever come across, bar none, including that of the big manufacturers like RI and Shoei and all the others. This is probably the lightest helmet money can buy without compromising any kind of safety or performance aspects. Now, besides the fact that it is very light, you also have what I consider to be probably the best, if not close to the best, venting scheme. Starting from the front, you have like major chin vents on here, 4 inlets, 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's no switch on the front, you'll notice, and the reason for that is because the switch to activate the vents are actually located behind the chin bar. It's quite a good design decision if you ask me. I don't think there's a real need to have the switches on the outside. I think it's good that they have it on the inside. It keeps the outlook clean and smooth, and I personally like it. You don't fiddle with this very often anyway. In my case, I mean, I have the vents open almost all the time, so I'm sure for you it'll probably be closed or open. Rarely will you be switching between them very frequently, and thus you don't really need to have a switch on the outside of the helmet. Now, in addition to the chin vent here, you also have 2 brow vents, one here and one here. They are operable by switches just above the vents themselves. They're not really easy to manipulate, I will admit. They're a bit stiff, and even with 4 months of use, well, not really much use actually, since like I said, I don't really open or close them very much. They are still pretty stiff and hard to operate. That may not be such a good thing. I guess that goes against the it probably counts as a strike, you know, towards the performance of the helmet itself. But as far as the venting, it's good to have. You don't see this very often on high-level helmets even. The only ones, to my knowledge, that have vents of this kind of configuration will probably be something like an RI, except that the RIs have the vent on the visor itself. So I personally think it's better to have it on the shell. It's less fiddly, and you know, I think it should all be integrated, and I think it looks better that way as well. And last of all, on the top you have another massive set of intakes that kind of channel air from the front of the helmet through the top of the comfort liner and the EPS, and kind of flow back out through the exhaust valve. But before I get to the exhaust section on the rear of the helmet, I should also bring to your attention the fact that this helmet has something you don't see very often, which is a side exhaust vent, and this is actually positioned right where your ear would be. So not only does it vent hot air out from your ear, which everybody knows, I mean, if you want a full face helmet, you would know that it's a hot spot. So not only does it vent the hot air out from this section here, but it also, I think, in my opinion, actually gives you a bit of situational awareness, because it actually allows you to hear bikes coming up from your left or right, which I think actually makes a lot of sense if you ride your bike a lot on the track. You know, it's good to know who's coming up behind you, and I think these vents are here exactly for that purpose. So I can't confirm that. They didn't actually say that was what it was for. They just kind of marketed it as an exhaust vent. But I think that might actually be like an unintended second use, actually. And last of all, moving to the back, we have the exhaust vents coming out from the rear of the helmet. Of course, I'm sure you probably already know from seeing a lot of reviews, and it is a trend nowadays to have vents on the back of the helmet, because there is a low pressure zone on the rear of the helmet, and that aids in kind of like sucking hot air out from the inside, provided you have vents on the rear, of course. And in addition to that, you have some very nicely well designed spoilers as well, which I think adds downforce under high speed conditions. The graphics overall, you've probably had a look at. I think generally it's quite a good quality that you see. It's not on the same standard as, say, an Airoh or Shoei, which in my opinion probably have the best graphics I have ever seen on any helmet. It's pretty close though. If Airoh and Shoei were a 10, I would give this guy, the quality of the graphics, at least an 8.5 or a 9. So it is pretty close. It's only when you get really close to the details that you kind of see that it's not so layered, it's not so textured or three-dimensional as you might get on some of the Shoeis and Airohs. It's actually a bit flat. Maybe it was a design intention to have it look flat. I mean, given that this is the Dovizioso race replica graphic, you might be able to get a more textured graphic from another Airoh GP 500 model. I wouldn't know. This is the only one I'm familiar with. This is the one I wanted all along. So you might want to have a closer look. And if you feel that the graphics are up to par, then you're more than welcome to I suppose, to pick one up based on that alone. But generally, I am happy with it. I do have high standards personally, I think, when it comes to graphics, and I am very, very happy with it. So just moving along to the front, you now have also a very, what I would call a secure visor. Now in this, where the visor is concerned, I have to say that there are some real pros and cons here. Now the first thing is, just looking at the visor is that, and just feeling it and fooling around with it, one thing I can tell you right off the bat is that this thing is tough. It is built to be very rigid, and the material of the visor itself is far thicker than what you would get with a normal visor. I think some of the other manufacturers also have slightly thicker visors. You might find that on maybe, say, a Shark helmet, for example. I think this is actually in the same kind of vein as what you would get from a Shark. Or it's thick. I don't know exactly how thick. Maybe about maybe 2 or 3 mm, but it's definitely thicker than a normal helmet visor, and I think that extra rigidity is more of a safety consideration more than anything else. However, there are some drawbacks to having such a thick visor. The first being that it is extremely difficult to manipulate, and it's kind of hard. I mean, it could be due to the mechanism as well. It doesn't flex. I suppose that's a good thing. When you open it, it flexes a little bit, but not as much as you would get from something thinner. But overall, the feel of the visor is such that it doesn't feel like something you would be comfortable with opening and closing on a regular basis, which is one of the reasons why I think that this helmet is not so great for street use. And following on that point a little bit, you also notice, as I've been doing, that there are some very limited positions when it comes to opening and closing the visors. Specifically, you have the closed position like this. There is no cracked position like some helmets offer, where they sit kind of like that. There is no position for this on this helmet. The next position up would be like that, which is, in my opinion, pretty much useless, because when you've got your helmet on, open in this position, half of your vision is looking through the visor itself and the other half is looking underneath it, and it introduces a kind of optical distortion which makes it absolutely unusable. You know, you can't ride your bike with your visor half open like this. You just can't see properly. So it's going to be either full closed or full open all the time. And really this, I mean, the best thing I can think of is, I like to call this the scratch your nose visor position, because that's the only thing you'll be able to do with the visor in this position. You might be able to get your hand in there and scratch your nose a little bit, but that's about it. You won't be doing any riding in this position. So it's up to you to decide whether you want to have it full closed, which I believe is the what was intended for this helmet, or full open like so. And it will not be easy to close or open. It will take some work, and I've been using this helmet for 4 or 5 months. It hasn't gotten any easier. That might actually be a good thing, because you know, it's nice to know that, you know, with repeated use and flipping things on and off or up and down, that they don't get any looser with time. I think that speaks volumes about its build quality. And I must say, overall, the build quality on this helmet is top notch. I am very happy with it. I think it is an absolutely over-engineered, sometimes a little bit too over-engineered piece of equipment. And I have the feeling that this will last many, many years if you wanted it to. Now, moving on to the side of the helmet itself, and looking at the visor, I'm going to talk a little bit more about some other things which I actually personally don't really like very much, but I have to talk about it anyway. With the visor closed, and like I said, it's not easy to open or close. You have a little switch here, it's only on the left. In an unintuitive way, pushing the switch back actually locks the visor closed. Now, I find this completely redundant. It's absolutely unnecessary, because the visor is so stiff and stays closed so well that I just cannot understand or fathom why would anyone want to use this switch. Because I mean, it sits so well on it. So in fact, it sits a little bit too tight, if you ask me. And then to have that additional lock, it just speaks to me as being completely unnecessary. And the second thing I want to talk about is the actual visor removal system. It is not easy. I'm going to say it right now. It is not easy to take the visor on and off. It is not something that is done as nearly as easily as what you see with other manufacturers. Here's basically how it works. It has a mechanism that sits here to lock the visor in place. There's a switch. You press that switch and this section pops out here. You might be able to see it a little bit on the side. And once it's out, you have to pull this up and kind of rotate it anti-clockwise, like so, and pop it off. And once that comes off, you have got a loose piece of equipment. Now, this is something you can probably lose if you don't keep track of it. I don't really like this system very, very much. But then again, I think the thought process they were going through when they decided on this was to make it as secure as possible. And sometimes you really have to go back to what it was intended for. This helmet was intended for race use, and you know, when you look at all the features, it kind of makes sense. I mean, if a motorcycle is being used in a race situation, who cares how hard it is to open the visor or even to change it, you know? Now, all you care about is how secure it is and how well it stays put in the event of an accident. And at least one thing I can say about this is that it's not going anywhere. I guarantee you that it's going to stay where it is. It's not going out. And if I had to say what will probably be the hardest visor in the world to shear off in the event of an accident, well, this is the one. I simply cannot think of a better one than this. So it does come with a set of trade-offs, and that is that if you find yourself removing visors or even the comfort liner, which I'll talk about in a bit, very frequently, you're going to have a little bit of a harder time. It's not going to be impossible, but it's doable. But you have to accept that these are the kind of considerations they put into place to achieve the goals that they wanted. Now, flipping underneath, we have the emergency release system here. Now, this is actually a loose strap. What I've done is actually stapled it to the retainer strap on the cheek pad, and that keeps it in place because it's actually supposed to tuck in and under and stick out on this end here. The trouble with it is that I don't think this cheek pad removal strap is long enough, and when you actually have it tucked in underneath this little retaining strap here, you can ride for about 10 minutes and the next thing you know, it's flapping in the wind. It just comes out by itself. So what I did was I kind of stapled it in place just so it doesn't flap around. You do hear it when you move at speed and the wind blows and this thing starts flapping around the outside. You will hear it and it will annoy you. So this is one of the things I had to do to kind of mitigate that effect. The strap is a standard double D-ring system with a white chin strap, which is something you don't see very often on a full face helmet. I personally haven't seen a white strap anywhere except in this helmet. A little thing about the comfort liner, it is of a very, very good material, I must say. It sits in what I would call a race fit. You know, you've probably heard that in other reviews as well. I think that's the best term I can use to describe how it fits. It sits very tight against your face, however it is very plush and you feel no hot spots, and it pushes in on your cheeks and on your head in such a way that makes you feel like you're corseted and you're absolutely comfortable. I have to say that this is one of the best comfort liners I've ever had pushing against my face, even though it is pushing pretty hard, but that is what keeps it in place at speed. And boy, does this stay in place. I mean, there are a couple of other things that they incorporated into the helmet itself to kind of keep it stable at high speeds. One being the anti-buffeting system you've got on the front here. You probably have more information on that if you went to the website and read about it, but basically you've got this section here which deflects air away from the base of the helmet, and then you've got these little rubber spoilers down the back and pointing out like so. This might give you a better view of it. These are made of rubber. They sit just below the or we'll say just beam the neck roll, and I think what they are supposed to do is kind of reduce buffeting. And if you don't know what that is, that's when your helmet goes like this at high speed, which I'm sure many of you will be familiar with. This is rock solid, I have to say. I haven't said this yet, but I actually ride a naked bike. I ride a Ducati Hypermotard, and I spend most of my time on track with this helmet. And I've been as fast as about 210 kilometers with absolutely zero wind protection. And that's, I would say that is the best possible test you can put this helmet through to test how well it holds up under high speed buffeting. And this thing really holds together. I'm not going to say that it doesn't move at all. It does. Every helmet will. I think that's physics. You can't get around that. But this helmet has moved the least of all the helmets that I have owned, and that's saying a lot, you know, because it really does perform to a very high standard when used in a race or track situation. And I like it a lot. I'm very happy with it. So just going back into the EPS and the comfort liner. I'm not sure if you could see it. It's probably a bit hard. It's probably going to be very dark in there. But the roof of the helmet and the top and the comfort liner is very, very airy. There's plenty of gaps in there for air channels to run through, and that's where you come to the top vents. And they aren't just there for nothing. They do let in a lot of air, and you also have a very good inner system that allows the air to channel through the top of the helmet and back out the rear of the helmet. Put together, this thing ventilates very, very well. It's very, very light. It has I would say, a well above average level of build quality, probably close to the best. However, remember that this is a helmet that was not designed for anything other than a very, very specific purpose, and that is for track use or a very, very aggressive street riding on a sport bike. Now, I have a naked bike. I am happy with it, and the reason why I chose this helmet was because it offered the best, what I felt was the best ventilation scheme, and the look, of course, which was exactly what I wanted, and extreme lightweight in a very high quality package. And in that aspect, it has delivered. But I have to be realistic and tell you that taking off the comfort liner, for example, and the visor is not an easy task. I might try to do that in another video if there's demand for it, but it's not easy. It's probably one of the hardest helmets I've ever had to remove the comfort liner on, and putting it back is a real ordeal, I must say. It's not easy. You will struggle. You will succeed eventually, but it will not be easy. So you have to be patient, and if you are, and these are the features that you're looking for, I really don't think you can do any better than this. It's just as good, if not better, than any RI or Shoei or any high-level race helmet. The only decision you need to make for yourself is whether the compromises that were undertaken in this particular helmet would suit you or not. And last of all, it's not exactly the cheapest helmet. It's pretty expensive. It sits up there with the most expensive ones. I think you can probably buy these for about $400 to $500 I guess, depending on where you stay, if not more. So it is priced up there with the best. The good news is it does perform with the best. If you are prepared to trade some of the creature comforts, like I said about removing the visor or the comfort liner. But otherwise, overall, I would say you are getting a very high quality helmet, and I do hope this video has been a great help to you in allowing you to decide if this is something you want to buy for yourself. Personally, I like it. It's not perfect, you know. I give it, I'd say, a 9 upon 10, but I think this is something I'm going to be keeping for a long time. Thanks, and see you next time. Okay, hello guys, here I am again, and in this section of the review, my intention is to kind of take you through the process involved in getting the visor and the comfort liner off the helmet, and if possible, I'll try to put it back in again. As I've mentioned before in the earlier section of the review, it is not an easy task. It is achievable, but it is not easy. And I thought it might be useful for you to just have a look and see how exactly one goes about getting all this stuff off and then back on again. And that might factor into your decision as to whether you think it's a worthwhile thing to do to purchase this helmet for yourself. So in Disassembly, the first thing one has to do is to open the visor. like so, it does make the job much easier to get the visor off first before you start working on the comfort liner, just so that you know you don't have your hands all over the visor and getting fingerprints all over it and all that stuff, which if you're OCD like me will definitely bother you. So just turning the helmet on its side here, like I said before, there's a button here on the side, and what you do with it is you press it like so, and this section pops up here. Now once this section pops up, you kind of just pull it out a little bit and turn it anti-clockwise like so, and once it turns until it can't turn any further, which it will be at about 11 o'clock, just pull it off like so, and it just pops off like so, and you end up with this little thing here. Now it is able to be used on both sides, so don't worry if you get it mixed up. It's not fixed to one particular side of the helmet. So that piece is off. I'm just going to put that aside, and I'm going to spin the helmet around to this side now, and I'm going to do the same thing, turning it clockwise this time, basically to the front of the helmet, and popping it off. Okay, that's two pieces off. Now the visor is still stuck in place. It's quite a good mechanism. It works even with the cap off. But to get it off, it's pretty simple. Just pull it, and off it pops. Repeat for the other side, like so. Pull it, and off it comes. And after that, you end up here with the fully removed visor system. And now that I've got it off, you can also have a look at it and see that there are provisions here for you to have a pin lock visor mounted for anti-fog, if that is something you want to do. In my case, I don't use it, so it's empty, as you can see. You can also see the visor locking mechanism that sits on the inside of the visor over here. And I don't use it very much, so I can't tell you exactly how it works, but there it is. Okay, visor set aside, we can now begin to work on the comfort liner itself. So just to recap a little bit, this is a medium size shell, and they come from sizes ranging from extra small to medium, extra small to medium, then to large, and then to extra large. And this helmet comes in 3 shell sizes as well, and the extra small gets its own dedicated shell size, so that's shell size number 1. And then on the small and the medium, you have shell size number 2, and on the shell size relating to the large and the extra large, that's shell size number 3. So in this case, this is the medium, so this would be the shell size number 2. Just a bit of information in case you were wondering. So anyway, going on to the helmet itself, we take the chin strap off if it was tied up to begin with. And before I start, I would also like to point out to you that this chin strap padding here is not removable. It is absolutely permanent, and it can never be removed. I'm not sure if that was a good idea. I would probably rate that as a con against this helmet, but I guess for most people it won't matter. To me it doesn't. It's not really that big of a deal. Oh, and before I do that, I might as well talk a little bit about this as well, which is the chin curtain, which I think is a very well designed chin curtain, for the simple reason that it's actually a mesh material. Some of the other helmet manufacturers give you a chin curtain which is not very breathable. It's almost a solid piece of cloth across, and in this case it's not. So it's actually very usable even in very warm weather, which is a good thing, at least for me. So going down to the cheek pads first, it's pretty standard at this point. It's usually 3 snaps, and in this case it is no different. 1, 2, and 3. And once the snaps are off, you just pull it like so. Don't be afraid to apply a little bit of force, because I can tell you one thing about this comfort liner is that it's very secure. And I think that's a good thing. It's probably one of the most secure comfort liners I've ever seen. This is not one of those comfort liners that kind of come out, you know, over time, and with frequent removal and reinstallation, it gets loose. This is not one of those. This really stays in place. It's a good system. A bit too hard to put on and get off. Well, getting it off is a lot easier than putting it on, but it is hard to put it back on. But when it's on, it stays there and doesn't go anywhere, and that's a good thing. That's one of the cheek pads. We take 3 snaps off the other side, 2 and 3. Get the chin straps out of the way, and once again pull like so. I've never actually used the emergency removal system. I don't know how well it works. I don't know if you could use it to remove the cheek pads on a regular basis. Personally, I wouldn't do it, because I don't think that the emergency system was designed to be used on a regular basis. I think it was probably designed to be used once, and that might therefore mean that as you pull it out, the little snaps that sit on the other side of the cheek pad might go with it, so I wouldn't recommend that you use it on a frequent basis, if at all, except in an actual emergency. So like I said before, the foam is of a very good material. I like it very much. It sits very plush, very firm, and it has a very nice feel on the skin. It's probably the best that I've ever experienced myself personally. I think it's fantastic. So moving on, we go now to the actual comfort liner itself on the top of the helmet. We start with the back, kind of just pull it out like so, and you can kind of see the mechanism that locks it in place. It looks like a keyhole, and inside the helmet itself, what you will actually see a kind of a slot where this keyhole plastic thingamajig actually goes in. And the hardest part, and the reason why I complain so much, is because this part is very difficult to get back in perfectly, and if you don't put it in perfectly, it just slides right out, but I'll get to that in a bit. Continuing to the front, you just pull. There are 3 snaps that hold it in place on the forehead section. You just pull back on them, one at a time, like so, and with that you have fully removed the EPS liner. So looking at the top, you can see how aggressive the channeling is on this guy. You get plenty of gaps, plenty of room for the air to flow from the front to the back. It's absolutely fantastic. And I can tell you, wearing this helmet on the move, you absolutely feel the airflow. It's like air conditioning in your head. It really feels that good, and I'm not kidding. So with that out, we now have all the pieces on the table here. So in the next stage, I'm going to try and put it back for you if I can. Okay guys, continuing with the video now. This is the hardest part. I'm going to try and get the comfort liner back into the helmet with as little fuss as possible. And just before I start, I'd like to also point out the channels of air that you can see on the EPS itself. This is one of the most aggressive venting schemes I have ever seen on any helmet, regardless of cost or standard of safety. I mean, you can just see what it would feel like probably to have air running through those channels with the helmet on your head. It would feel very nice, and I can tell you, it really does feel as nice as you think it does. Okay, moving in. Let's try and get the comfort liner back in first. Now, I haven't done it that many times, to be honest. I've done it a few times, but I feel that it's mostly a matter of technique. And by saying that, I mean that if you can get the technique right, it makes your job a whole lot easier. So I'm just going to share with you what I think the correct technique would be, or at least more correct than just going at it blindly like what I used to do at the very beginning that didn't result in very happy memories for me. But basically, the first thing that needs to go in with the comfort liner is to put this key section here into the slot there, and this has to go in very tight. Now this is an important step. You don't want to do this haphazardly, because if this thing is loose, then when you put on the helmet and take it off, it's going to come out. So you want to make sure you get this step right before you move on to the rest. So to do that, personally, what I like to do is kind of like push it in first with the EPS out, and go to the back of it and actually kind of push it in from the underside. That makes it easier to get your fingers in there and push it in as deep as it will go. And that's the key to getting it to lock in place, is to get your fingers in there and push it as far in as you absolutely can until it stops moving. And it's only when it has absolutely stopped moving that you know that the EPS liner is secure. If you don't push it in all the way, if it only goes in halfway or even 90% of the way, it won't lock in place, and the next thing you know, it'll pull right out like so. It'll come out just like that. So you want to make sure that you put it in force it in as far as it will go. And yes, it's going to take a bit of a finger forcing to get it in there, but once it's in there, you'll know it's secure. It won't click. You won't really click, so you won't know that it's stuck. But when you just pull on it gently, it won't move. And when it doesn't move, you know that it's in place. So once that part is done, you pull the chin straps aside, like so. Kind of just line the comfort liner over the inside and over the EPS. This part is a little bit easier. We have 3 snaps. It's just simply a matter of getting them in. I like to work from the sides in, so I'm going to push in on the side first. This one kind of snaps into place. You kind of feel it click when it goes in. You do that once on one side, and it kind of clicks in on the other side, and then last of all, you do it on the center. and you have to push in a little bit to get it in there, and then once it clicks, you hear that click, you know that it's in and it's secure. And now once this is in, you know that everything is all right. It's secure. It probably isn't going anywhere, and that's what makes it so secure, really, although it's not very easy. Okay guys, now we have the comfort liner in place. It's been secured on the back and the front. I'm now going to work on the cheek pads and try and get those into the helmet itself, and that will be the last stage of the installation of the complete comfort liner. We start now with the what appears to be the left side, I think, of the cheek pad. We'll start firstly by putting the chin straps through. Now you'll notice as well that there are two hooks on the front and the back of the cheek pad, and the idea is to kind of get them all in at the same time. So the best way to do it, I think, is to start with the rear, the part that's closer to the neck roll, and kind of like line it up with the slot there and push in. And it actually kind of goes in and back, so don't be afraid to be a little bit rough with it. Push it in there and pull it to the back. It kind of hooks it in place, and you'll know you've got it right when you try to pull the cheek pad and it doesn't come out. That's how you know it's locked in place. And once it's locked in place, you can kind of work on the front now. And the front has a set of hooks as well. You kind of line them up as best you can. I'm not sure I'm going to do that right, but if I can do it at all, okay, that seems to go pretty well. And once the front goes in, you kind of just push the middle section through, and it kind of just locks, and you'll know you got it right because it is absolutely rigid. It doesn't come out. So once that's done, you just align the snaps together and lock them in place. Which is the easiest part, I guess, same as any other helmet. 1, 2, and let's see if I can find the third one. 3. Okay, so that's one set of cheek pads in. The next one is the right side. Yep, the right side. And once again, it's the same thing. I'm just going to repeat myself a little bit just so it gets through. Is that you have two hooks, and the idea is to kind of get them both in and then work on the center. So like I said, once again, start with the rear hook first, and you'll notice from the design that it kind of goes in, and then it has a little bit of wiggle room for it to move a little bit to the back. And that's exactly what you want to do, because once it goes to the back, it locks in place. There's no way it's going to come out. So this thing goes in here, like so. Right, and it'll go back just a little bit, not too much, you know. You might not even feel it, but it definitely did go back a little bit. That's how it locks in place, and you'll know that it went back the right amount when the hook on the front lines up over here. And once that lines up and it goes in nicely, you'll know you're good. Okay guys, so we've got the EPS and the cheek pads in. So everything is as it was before we started. Everything is in and nice and secure. The next stage is to work on the visor, which is a bit of an ordeal in itself as well. Thankfully not as difficult as the EPS. It's not a very complex system. It's just a little bit hard to get your hands in the right position to work on it. Now if you look at the side of the helmet, you will see a little groove. And there's more than one groove. The main thing to remember is you want to work on the one that's on the top. And on the side of the visor, there's this little receptacle here that lines up with the groove. And what you want to do is just simply line it up. In this case, it's going to be a bit hard to see because this is a mirror visor, so all you're going to see is a reflection. But basically, you need to line it up. And once it's lined up, you need to kind of move the mechanism, which you can see is movable here. This is actually a self-tightening mechanism for the visor that kind of locks it in a very close position with a very tight seal to keep all the noise out and keep it in place, which is probably one of the reasons why it was so rigid and difficult to open and close, as I mentioned earlier in the review. But basically, you just need to, once the visor is lined up, you just need to pull on this and it kind of locks in place, well, hopefully anyway. So I'm going to try that now. So by lining this up here, like so. And you really only need to do one side first. You don't have to do them both at the same time, but they will need, the visor does need to be in a slightly open position. And once you've got it lined up, which is not exactly easy to do, seeing as I can't see through the visor. I suppose it would be easier if you were actually using a clear visor or a light smoke visor, which is the visor that actually comes with this helmet actually. You just kind of push it and there you go. Now it's locked in place. You can tell because the mechanism is actually flush with the visor itself, and that's how you know you got it right. You spin it over to the other side, and now it's the same thing. Line it up like so, and remember, you need to pull on the mechanism forward, and you actually have to do that. You can't actually manipulate the visor such that it locks onto place. You actually have to get your finger on the mechanism, and that's what I don't like about this system, is that it almost kind of requires you to have 3 hands, if you know what I mean. And if you don't have 3 hands, it makes it much more difficult. And there you go. Once you pull on it sufficiently to kind of enter the circular opening on the visor itself, it kind of just goes in and it locks in place. And once it's there, actually the visor is operable. It opens and closes perfectly. The last stage is simply to add this guy, the locking mechanism, to the top, and you will install it with this section, which is the claw that comes up when you hit the button. That needs to be at about 11 o'clock, which is the same position it was in when I took it off, if you remember from the earlier section of this video. And turn it, in this case, clockwise, and simply push it back down again, and there it is. It's locked in place. Move it over to the other side. I'm going to do it again. Once again, we start at about 11 o'clock. And I'm sorry, this is the other side now, so it's going to be about 1 o'clock. It goes in, this part comes out, just turn it to the back, or to the anti-clockwise in this case, and just push it back down. And there you go, it's done.